The sky split open without warning. From the quiet farms of Kansas to the neon-lit towers of Shanghai, humanity looked up and saw an impossible sight. Colossal vessels suspended in the clouds, like gods in judgment. They didn't arrive with thunder or flame. No, the Zarkari came with silence, their metallic leviathans humming softly as if Earth's gravity barely mattered. World leaders scrambled. Fighter jets scrambled faster. But nothing touched the ships. Missiles vanished midair, intercepted by invisible shields or redirected by unknown forces. Within hours, every major capital received the same message, broadcasted directly into minds, bypassing all technology. We are the Zarkari, warriors eternal. We challenge your species to war, not conquest, but of proof, a ritual of strength. You have 48 of your planetary hours to answer, resist or surrender, fight or kneel. The words carried weight not only in tone but in intent. This was not invasion. It was a performance, a test, one where Earth was expected to entertain. At a NATO emergency summit in Brussels, chaos reigned. Generals shouted, politicians begged, scientists speculated. But behind the cacophony, one man stood still, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Sergeant Raymond Kincaid, call sign Ghost, had seen war take every shape, but never one like this. They don't want diplomacy, he said finally, voice cutting through the room like a blade. They want blood sport, a stage, and they think we're the clowns. Kincaid had no medals displayed, no ceremonial stripes. His resume lived in the whispered stories of black ops units, and distant wars never officially fought. He was a relic of precision in a world shifting toward drones and automated conflict. Footage began to flood the web. Zarkari warriors on the ground, towering reptilian bipeds clad in obsidian armor, laughing as they crushed old American Abrams tanks underfoot. One clip showed a squad of human soldiers emptying entire magazines into a Zarkari patrol, only for the rounds to bounce harmlessly off their shimmering exosuits. The aliens roared with laughter, collecting the bullets as souvenirs. Primitive fire sticks, one translated voice sneered. Your weapons belong in a museum. Kincaid watched it all without blinking. He saw through the muscle, the size, the energy fields. He didn't care about lasers or shields. He cared about habits, timing, blind spots. The Zarkari didn't just believe they were superior. They knew it. That was their weakness. Back in Washington, in a dimly lit intelligence briefing room buried beneath the Pentagon, a counterproposal began to form. Not a full frontal assault. Such a strategy would be suicidal. No, the aim was psychological disruption, precision, fear. They called it Project Phantom Fong. A single team, no mechs, no tanks, just one purpose. Remind Zarkari what death feels like when it's unseen, unfelt, until it's too late. The president approved it with a single nod. Kincaid was handpicked to lead it. He didn't celebrate. He didn't hesitate. He simply nodded and said, I need a rifle high ground, a name. You'll get all three, the director said. Your target is General Cattell. He commands the largest Zarkari battalion in Europe. He mocks us daily on global feeds. Kill him and we send a message. Kincaid's fingers flexed as if already feeling the weight of a trigger. Then let's write them a message they'll never forget. Meanwhile, Zarkari broadcast continued. General Cattell himself appeared, his booming voice shaking buildings. We honor your courage, tiny earthlings, but your weapons are toys. Your soldiers are children. Come, show us your best. We will bury them in stories told to our young. The world watched in silence. Fear gripped cities. Evacuations began. The internet drowned in despair and bravado. But far away, in a remote underground facility in Norway, Kincaid began to build. He rejected every standard rifle offered. Too noisy, too traceable. Instead, he requested a custom chassis. Bolt action. Suppressed. Old school. He didn't want tech. He wanted trust. A weapon that fired because he told it to, not because the chipset was optimal. As the rifle came together, so did the team. For operators. All ghosts like him. No names, just roles. Spotter, hacker, medic, ghost. Their insertion window. 40 hours from Zarkari ultimatum. On the final night before deployment, Kincaid stood alone on a wind-blasted cliff. Staring into the dark, a young technician approached, clipboard in hand. "Sir," she asked hesitantly, "do you really think this can work? One shot against giants." He didn't answer at first. Then, almost absently, he whispered, "They think size makes them gods, but gods bleed too." She didn't understand. She didn't need to. By morning, the team vanished into the clouds. No farewells, no press. Just silence. And somewhere above, within his war barge cloaked in storm, General Katow laughed again, unaware that something ancient and deadly had already been set in motion. A human ghost, with a rifle born from iron and stubborn pride, was coming, and he didn't miss. The descent began in darkness. Kincaid's boots hit snow with a soft crunch, barely audible over the wind screaming across the alpine peaks. The halo jump had gone as planned. No flares, no tracking, just a long freefall into the jagged silence of the Swiss Alps. They were ghosts now, hidden from every satellite and scan the Zarkari might deploy, for shadows melted into white, armored in thermal gear and silence. The target was nestled in a glacial valley, an alien command post draped across ancient rock like some invasive fungus. A lattice of obsidian towers pulsed with violet energy, humming with the slow, arrogant rhythm of species that didn't believe in camouflage. Why would they? Nothing on Earth had hurt them yet. Kincaid lay prone, eyes behind the scope of his custom-built rifle. Its barrel was long, matte black, unbranded, handmade by a gunsmith who owed him favors from old wars. Every part had been stripped of signature metals. It fired with no muzzle flash, no trail, just speed and silence. He watched the Zarkari through magnification. They moved with deliberate ease, their enormous bodies heavy with muscle but not clumsy. Everything about them suggested absolute confidence. They didn't bother to set up perimeter defenses against snipers. In their minds, sniping was an Earth tactic, and Earth had already failed. "They're predictable," Kincaid muttered into his comms. From his left, his spotter, call sign 6, replied without looking up. "Patterns locked. The general emerges every 4 hours, talks to his war pups. No armor, no helmet, just ego. He thinks he's untouchable. He knows he is." Kincaid didn't smile, but something in his chest tightened, something like satisfaction. That kind of certainty, it was a liability. Back at the temporary forward base, buried beneath a frozen cave, his team had mapped out the alien routines. The hacker, a wiry woman named Finch, had broken into a half-dozen ground-based Zarkari signal relays, watching their encrypted feeds like stolen television. What they saw confirmed it. General Katow wasn't just a commander. He was a performer. Every 4 hours, he gathered junior warriors and told them stories of conquest. They circled him like children around a fire, laughing when he replayed footage of Earth's failed resistance. Katow pointed at tanks reduced to slag, mocked the shrill human screams. He bragged about crushing skulls with bare hands, comparing the sound to popping fruit. He spoke not just in strength, but in certainty that Earth posed no threat. Kincaid made it personal. For hours they waited. Snow fell in quiet sheets, layering their positions with a natural cloak. The wind shifted, and Kincaid recalibrated. No computers, no tech, just math, instinct, and breath control. Behind him, 6 checked the time. 2 minutes to emergence. Kincaid steadied the rifle. His hands, scarred and calloused, wrapped around the grip like they'd never left it. The world narrowed to the valley below. Movement. Katow stepped out of the central structure, flanked by 2 lieutenants. His armor was ceremonial, more ornament than defense. His voice boomed, translated into 100 languages via broadcast. "I walk unguarded upon your world," he declared, chest swelling, "because I fear none of you. Our children laugh at your courage." Kincaid dialed in. Wind, west at 5 knots. Distance, 2,131 meters. Drop, 12.2 meters. Breathing, slow, silent. "Confirmed shot," he whispered. "Confirmed. Wind steady. Target exposed. You have your moment." Katal raised one massive hand, mimicking the motion of pulling a trigger. Even your snipers are phantoms, stories you whisper to each other before we burn your homes. Kincaid exhaled slowly. Then he squeezed. No flash, no sound, just movement. A whisper of death crossed 2 kilometers in less than 2 seconds. Katal's head snapped sideways. A burst of green ichor sprang across the platform. His body crumpled like cloth dropped from a line. The lieutenants froze, looking down at the general, confused. Then panic broke. Alarm screamed. Warriors scrambled for cover, scanning the ridgelines with weapons drawn. But there was nothing to see, nothing but snow and sky. In that instant, the illusion shattered. Zarkari discipline faltered. Shouts overlapped as commands clashed. No energy signal, no thermal trail, no enemy, just a body, still warm with a hole through its skull. Kincaid watched it unfold through the scope. Then, without a word, he dismantled the rifle in practice motion, piece by piece, each segment sliding into custom foam compartments in his pack. Not a shell casing left behind. They moved fast, down the ridge, into the brush. Finch triggered noisemakers 5 clicks east to mislead pursuit. The medic erased their tracks with low-grade thermite. Within 12 minutes, they were gone, vanished like myth. Back at base, Finch uploaded the only trace left behind, a close-up image of Katal's lifeless eyes, wide with disbelief. Alongside it, she embedded a digital message. We don't need energy weapons. We need only one shot. It spread faster than any virus. Encrypted, mirrored, shared in underground networks and civilian channels alike. Earth's morale ignited. For the first time since the invasion, the world felt something unfamiliar. Hope. As night reclaimed the mountains, Kincaid sat near a dying campfire, chewing on dry rations. Six said nothing. Neither did the others. They didn't need to. The next move belonged to the Zarkari, and Earth had drawn first blood. The Zarkari were a proud species, and pride was an unforgiving mistress. Within hours of Kincaid's strike, the alien forces responded, not with rage, but with cold precision. The field officers had seen the footage, replayed it 12 times, analyzed every angle, every movement. A sniper, they assumed, wasn't something to be feared. They thought they could locate the source easily. They thought the human's victory would be a fluke. But pride can be a dangerous thing, and the Zarkari's arrogance came at the expense of their perception. They began to adjust. They started deploying countermeasures, more drones, better scanners, and mobile shields that disrupted anything they couldn't immediately identify. Kincaid's shot wasn't just a blow to their commander. It was a breach in their self-image. They believed that no one on Earth had the skill or technology to harm them. Now they knew they were wrong. Back in the hidden cave that served as the team's base of operations, Kincaid and his unit sat in grim silence. There were no celebrations, no congratulations. It was a hollow victory, because the battle had only just begun. Their sniper shot had cut to the myth of invincibility, but the real war was yet to be fought. Zarkari don't do surrender, Kincaid said, his voice barely a whisper in the cold, cavernous room. He paced, fingers rubbing the stubble on his chin. They'll send their best after us. They won't make the same mistake twice. Six nodded, looking at the feed streaming across her laptop. They're already deploying more forces. I'm seeing thermal signatures. Lots of movement. The medic, a quiet man named Ramos, sat in the corner, fiddling with a set of medical tools. And we have no backup. Just us. If they come at us in force, we're sitting ducks. Kincaid stopped pacing. He looked at each of them in turn, measuring their resolve. Each had their role. Each knew the risks. But there was something else in their eyes, something beyond fear, beyond the weight of the impossible task before them. It was something like the edge of a blade, honed to perfection. They were ready. Kincaid turned back to the screen, eyes narrowing. We'll hit them again, but we need to be smarter this time. A single shot won't be enough. We have to make them fear the unknown. The next phase of their plan was simple: psychological warfare. No more waiting for Katal to step into the open. No more allowing the Zarkari to dictate the tempo. Kincaid's team will become ghosts in the system, an invisible force, pulling at the threads of the invaders' confidence until it unraveled. They split into pairs. Kincaid and Six would move out first, scouting the terrain around the Zarkari command center. Finch would hack into the Zarkari surveillance network, creating a false trail that would lure them into traps. Ramos would stay behind, patching up injuries and coordinating their movements. The clock was ticking. Every minute brought the Zarkari closer to realizing that they were not the predators. They were the prey. They had no time to waste. Kincaid and Six moved under cover of night, blending into the shadows of the craggy mountains. The air was thin and sharp, but Kincaid didn't feel it. He never did when he was focused. His mind was a singular blade, cutting through the noise, slicing through the fear. They moved with the precision of a well-practiced routine. The sound of their boots on snow was a ghostly echo lost in the howling winds. Kincaid's mind was already racing ahead, calculating routes, predicting the Zarkari movements. They would be watching the ridgelines, the forests, the open areas, but they wouldn't be expecting this. By dawn, Kincaid and Six had reached a high outcrop, a place where they could observe the alien command center without being seen. From their perch, they watched as the Zarkari reinforced their perimeter, placing drones in the air and mechanical sentries along the paths. "They're learning," Six murmured, her voice tinged with awe. "They're panicking," Kincaid corrected, voice tight with focus. "This is good. They're reacting." Through a scope, Kincaid could see the Zarkari warriors adjusting their strategies. They weren't just guarding. They were preparing for something they couldn't understand. The ghosts of Earth had entered their territory, and that made them dangerous. As the morning wore on, Finch worked her magic, feeding false intelligence into the Zarkari systems. She planted a fabricated message in their secure network, suggesting that a human infiltration team was approaching from the east. The Zarkari would believe it, and they would deploy their best troops to intercept them. It didn't matter that Kincaid and Six were still in the north. The Zarkari were already taking the bait. When the trap was set, Kincaid gave the signal, and the team moved once again, carefully, deliberately. They struck like shadows, silent and unseen. The first Zarkari patrol never knew what hit them. Kincaid's rifle cracked twice, and two of the alien warriors dropped before they even had a chance to raise their weapons. Six moved like lightning, throwing a grenade into a cluster of Zarkari mechs, sending them into a spiral of sparks and chaos. Then the message was sent, a burst of static, a blur of encrypted data, and the Zarkari systems began to unravel. They couldn't keep up with the deception. Their confidence, once unshakable, began to crack. The Zarkari were losing their grip on the battlefield. They were starting to understand what Kincaid had always known, that a well-placed shot could shake the foundations of their empire. And Earth had more than just one sniper. In the distance, the Zarkari began to regroup, their massive war machines rumbling as they tried to restore order. But it was too late. The doubt had been sown. Their warriors whispered of ghosts in the night, of soldiers who never showed their faces and struck when least expected. Kincaid smiled grimly as he watched the alien forces fall into disarray. His team had proven the Zarkari wrong. And now, they were playing on Earth's terms. It wasn't over yet, but the Zarkari were finally beginning to fear what they couldn't see. The Zarkari were no longer invincible. The world had watched their arrogance crumble, but no one understood just how deep the shift had gone. The earth-shattering strike that took General Catel's life, the ambushes that had followed, and the constant barrage of deception, all of it had chipped away at the Zarkari's pride until it was nothing but dust. Kincaid knew it was just the beginning. If they didn't break their spirits completely, if they didn't make them question everything, then the Zarkari would adapt. And when they adapted, they would be deadly beyond measure. But there was no turning back now. The team had grown accustomed to their new routine. Each night they struck, hitting harder, faster, with more precision. Finch, whose hacking skills had become their greatest asset, was relentless. She had discovered weak points in the Zarkari systems, their comms, their sensors. With every passing hour, she pulled threads, unraveling the alien network with the practiced ease of someone who had spent a lifetime in the shadows of the digital world. Kincaid never asked her how she did it. It didn't matter. As long as she did, The Zarkari were blind to their every move. Ramos kept the team together. He was the quiet one, the steady hand that always seemed to have what they needed, whether it was medical supplies or an extra edge of calm when things went sideways. He was a ghost too, but in a different way. The other three might have lived in shadows, but Ramos was a shadow, silent, unyielding, always a step ahead in knowing what came next. And Kincaid trusted him with his life. Six, the spotter, was a force unto herself. She was sharp, not just with a rifle, but with everything. She could read Kincaid's movements before he made them, knew when the air shifted, when a breeze meant more than just a gust of wind. Together, they were a seamless unit, ghosts moving through a world that no longer felt like their own. But the Zarkari were not finished yet. Kincaid had known they wouldn't be. After all, the Zarkari had seen their superiority, and for them, the idea of being outwitted was an affront to their entire existence. They didn't simply want to win now. They wanted revenge. And Katal's death was a symbol of their loss, a blow to their honor that could not go unanswered. Kincaid's team had struck where it hurt, and now the Zarkari would do the same. The Zarkari sent their best hunters into the field, elite warriors trained in tracking, in patience, in waiting. They had the resources of galactic empire at their disposal, but what they didn't have was the one thing Kincaid and his team had: the will to disappear. They moved like ghosts in the wind, like whispers in the night, and the Zarkari's finest struggled to keep up. But even the best trackers had their limits. Kincaid stood at the edge of the ravine, eyes scanning the distant horizon. He had been here for hours, alone with his thoughts and the rhythmic ticking of the clock in his mind. The Zarkari were closing in. Their hunters were relentless, following the faintest trail, footprints in snow, the lingering heat of human bodies. But Kincaid had learned long ago how to erase all signs of his presence. Six's voice crackled in his earpiece. "They're getting too close. We can't keep running. We need to hit them back before they corner us." He didn't reply immediately, not because he didn't hear her, but because he was thinking. The ground beneath them was frozen solid, the winds howling like the ghosts of fallen soldiers. The Zarkari's advantage was simple. They were bigger, faster, and they could track them through every method they had. They couldn't outrun them, not forever. "We don't outrun them," Kincaid said finally, voice low. "We stand and fight." There was a long pause. Then Six spoke again, her voice tight. "You sure about this? If we engage them now, we're dead." Kincaid's grip tightened around his rifle, the weight familiar in his hands. He could already see the plan forming. They need to believe they're winning. They need to think we're running scared. But the moment we stand our ground, we turn the tables. Ramos' voice joined in, calm as ever. "They've underestimated us. Let's give them something they didn't expect." Finch, who had been quiet for a while, finally spoke up. "I've got their communications. They're moving in from the south. I can buy you a few minutes. But once they're on top of you, I can't help." Kincaid nodded, his mind already in motion. The plan was simple, brutal, and it relied on one thing: the Zarkari's overconfidence. They believed they could overpower anything on Earth. It was time to shatter that belief for good. They would bait the Zarkari into their trap, lure them into a kill zone where they would fight not as individuals, but as a collective. The Zarkari's weakness wasn't their strength. It was their arrogance. They believed their technology could outmatch anything Earth had to offer. And Kincaid was about to show them how wrong they were. Kincaid spoke one last time into his comms. "On my mark, move out." The team scattered into position, moving like shadows. Kincaid took the high ground, watching through his scope as the Zarkari's hunters closed in. Their heavy boots crunched in the snow, the unmistakable hum of alien weapons charging up. They were sure of themselves. Too sure. Kincaid waited, each second stretching like an eternity. Then, without warning, he fired. The first shot rang out, a quick, clean kill, a Zarkari scout who had been too careless. The second came moments later, another alien warrior falling without a sound. The rest of the Zarkari froze, momentarily disoriented. And that was when the trap snapped shut. Explosives set by Six erupted from beneath the snow, sending two of the Zarkari into a flurry of sparks and fire. Ramos moved like a phantom, appearing from nowhere to incapacitate one of the hunters with a series of quick, surgical strikes. The Zarkari retaliated, but they were too slow, too stunned. Their movements were clumsy, uncertain. The ghosts of Earth had become predators. Kincaid squeezed the trigger one more time, dropping another hunter with ease. He could hear the Zarkari leader barking orders, the realization sinking in that this wasn't a hunt. It was a slaughter. For the first time, the Zarkari were on the back foot, and Kincaid knew they would never forget the price of underestimating humanity again. The battle was far from over, but in this moment, Earth had won, and that was enough to send a message: we are not your prey.